Well, Larry, welcome back to another conversation with yours truly. Thanks for joining me for this time. It's been fun to move through the book of Proverbs together.
I think that you used good wisdom when you chose Proverbs to sort of wrap up the season before summer comes in.
Yeah.
I've been really reflecting on Proverbs chapter 2.
Okay.
And boy, there's so much there.
Yeah.
I actually took some notes for today.
All right.
And I think there are 3 points that we can make sort of summarizing this chapter.
Sure.
And how important seeking wisdom is.
Yeah.
And the first point, actually wrote these things down.
Good for you.
The first point is a point that you made in your sermon last Sunday. You said that wisdom is knowing how to live in 95% of the situations for which there is no clear guidance. You know, you said there's clear guidance in the Bible for a lot of things.
Yep.
But there's a whole lot of things more
Yeah.
that there's not clear guidance in.
That's right.
I mean, just think if all the guidance that I needed to be written in there, and then all the other guidance that you needed to be written, the Bible would be incredibly large. And so God, in his wisdom,
Yep.
gave us the ability to seek him
Yeah.
for our individual wisdom.
Absolutely.
But it ain't easy to come by.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And I think that's shown by the several verses at the beginning of the chapter that begin with the word if. Would you mind reading some of those verses for us?
Let me do that, and I'll just kind of highlight all of the steps that we're called to take in pursuing wisdom.
Yeah.
It says, "My child, if you accept my words, if you treasure up my commandments, if you make your ear attentive to wisdom, if you incline your heart to understanding, if you indeed cry out for insight, if you raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver, if you search for it as for hidden treasures." So again and again and again, there's a sense of just how elusive wisdom is.
Yes.
That we're called to seek it, and the implication is that it's just not going to fall in our lap.
Exactly. The one here that for whatever reason, I guess maybe because silver was mined in Oregon, and it wasn't easy to come by. It wasn't
Sure.
even to find. If you seek it like silver.
Yeah.
So you're right. Wisdom is not easy to come by. We need to want to get it.
Right.
But it's worth it when we try.
Yeah.
Then there's that, you know, I was a math major, and so logic and if-then statements really come out to me. you
Sure.
know. So there's all of those ifs.
Yep.
And then there's a few thens. Then you will understand the fear of the Lord. Then you will find the knowledge of God. Then there's a parenthesis, for the Lord gives wisdom from his mouth, or the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He's a shield to those who walk blamelessly. He guards the path of justice and preserves the way of faithful ones. Then that's the end of a parenthesis. Then there's another then. Then you will understand righteousness and justice and equity.
Yep.
Think of those words for today.
Yeah.
Righteousness, justice, equity, every good path. For wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul.
Yeah.
Man.
It's quite a payoff
Yeah.
when we seek
Yeah.
wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's an if-then statement, I want to jump to the then.
Right.
You know?
Right.
What's in it for me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if the what's in it for me, the then part makes sense, then I'll go and read the ifs
Sure.
and see if it really is worth it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And there's enough there
Yeah.
in the then parts that
Yep.
I think I need to try
Should
hard
motivate
to see.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think part of my own personal challenge when I read this chapter, the whole premise here is that we don't start out in a place of wisdom. If we're just sort of unformed, going through our lives, we're missing something. And that's a bit of a bruise to my pride,
Absolutely.
to have to face up to that.
Yeah.
You're telling me I have all these steps I need to take to learn, to grow, to achieve wisdom? I thought I was already there.
Yeah.
And frankly, I guess I'll speak for myself. I often tend to conduct my life as though I'd basically thought through everything I need to think through.
Right. Yeah, me too.
And yet to be told there's this thing called wisdom. It's elusive. You might not be there yet. But if you seek it, the promise is it will be granted to you.
Right.
I'll tell you one setting in which I become aware of that is when I find myself in the presence of someone who I realize is wise.
Mm-hmm.
I just got through a conversation earlier today with a guy who has been a mentor to me in ministry. And we got into a whole variety of topics. And what struck me, and every time I'm with this person, there's just a sense of the wisdom born of this process, seeking God in the living of life through hard chapters. And it's not so much that he has a ready answer for every question or topic.
Right.
It's more of an attitude of humility and the ability to speak what's helpful.
Yeah.
In any situation. And we were starting down a road into some pretty controversial topics in this conversation. And he spoke up and said, you know what? Let's come back to this. I need to think more before I'm ready to speak on this topic.
Yeah.
And just that step demonstrated wisdom to me. Because how many of us want to rush in and talk before we think?
Yeah.
And he had the instinct to do the opposite. And I realized, wow, I have some growing to do when it comes to being wise in that way, having that kind of instinct. But I think it's easy for us to forget that we maybe haven't arrived yet at a place of wisdom.
I heard a person say a statement in a prayer recently that went something like this. Lord, give me the wisdom to learn what it is that I don't even know I need to know.
Wow. Yeah.
And I've found myself too, as you know, trying to understand everything that's going on these days.
Yeah.
Realizing that too. There's stuff I don't even know I need to know.
Sure.
Well, I need to ask God for wisdom to reveal those things to me.
That's right.
And this says he will.
Yeah.
The promise is there that he will.
Yeah, absolutely.
I need to seek it though.
Yep. Absolutely. To realize there are things I don't know.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And Lord, give me insight, give me wisdom.
And I think just learning that. I mean, you know, when you're a kid, a little one, you know you don't know anything. And so you ask your, I think you mentioned this in your message, you ask your parents, you know.
A million and one questions.
Yeah. And then you become a teenager and you think you know it all.
That's right.
And then you sort of get back in center again. But as you go through life, it's just natural to say, hey, I'm doing okay.
Right.
I'm doing pretty darn good, actually.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And then you have to be slapped upside the head sometimes. And,
and if we look around the world right now, we're all getting a bit of a slap upside the head.
Oh, we are.
And an invitation to say, hey, it's a time to grow.
Yeah. So my first point, you know, was the 95% of the thing. My second point we just talked about.
Okay.
Wisdom is hard to come by.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard to come by.
Sure.
And the third point, and I think that's about where we are now in our conversation, is this. Wisdom is the key to thriving in life. And I said it this way, thriving in life as unscathed as possible. And making the world a better place.
Okay.
And, you know, for lack of a better word, we're going to get scathed in life.
Sure.
That's a new word.
Whatever that means.
I mean, if there's a word unscathed, there must be a word scathed.
There's got to be a scathed.
But, you know, we're going to have stuff come up.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
But wisdom is being able to thrive overall in life because we learn from God how to handle those areas that we're not ready for.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a clue were going to happen.
Sure. You know, that's a good point, Larry, because when I think about folks that I consider to be wise, they've been scathed.
Yeah.
They've moved through those hardships in life.
Yeah.
And in that process, you know, really the common thread is that they have cried out. They've looked for help where help is to be found.
Yeah.
And there's a growing that happens as a result of that.
Yeah.
And the next time you find yourself in crisis, you've got some muscles for that.
Right.
You've got some perspective that equips you to go through that.
They've learned to get on their knees.
Yeah.
A lot. They
That's
have
right.
bruised knees.
That's right.
You know, and I don't know that my knees are bruised enough yet even. And it's so important because that's where wisdom comes from. It comes from prayer.
Sure.
You know, from just crying out to God or just talking to him in a general voice of conversation. God, I don't know what to do here. I'm confused. I don't know what to even think.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of times I just don't know what to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I need to be willing to cry out.
Sure.
So that when I think,
Yeah.
it's not my own stupid thoughts. It's, you know, I'm thinking thoughts that are more God's thoughts.
Yeah.
So that I can do actions that are more God's actions.
Right. Right. And you know, it kind of makes sense if you think about who God is. God is a good father. He wants us, his children, to thrive in life. And that doesn't mean that he wants to spare us from all hardship or challenge.
No, he wants us to have that so we can grow.
So we can grow and learn. I think about, you know, for me on the sidelines, if my son is up at bat and he strikes out, man, on the one hand, I want him to experience that so that he can be that much more resilient and not be a sore loser when he strikes out at the plate.
Right.
On the other hand, I want to be able in that moment of frustration to whisper through the fence and encourage him and tell him, hey, here's a way to take your cut next time that you might get at that pitch.
Yep.
And speak that wisdom. And I think God is clearly telling, if you look to me in those times, you're going to hear a word. You're going to be receiving the wisdom, the encouragement that you need because he wants us to thrive.
Yeah.
And if that's how I feel about my own kid, how much more so our Heavenly Father about us needing guidance and wisdom and looking to him for that.
Yeah.
He's going to give it because he wants us to thrive.
And how too, you know, you're the pastor of this church. I'm a kind of a leader in the church as well. We want our people to thrive.
Yes.
And we have learned some by seeking wisdom that it works.
Yeah.
And so what we're doing, sitting here talking about this, is to maybe spur some folks on to seek wisdom.
Yeah.
It's worth it.
That's right.
It's like mining silver.
That's right. Yeah. And praise God that neither me nor you has to be the font of all wisdom.
Oh, thank goodness.
We can be fellow pilgrims.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there is a source of wisdom.
Yeah.
And he's on our side.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we cry out as a church together for wisdom in so many different things.
Absolutely. You know? Right now.
Yeah.
When the future's so unclear, and even, Lord, you know, how can we meet? How can we gather safely? When? These are live questions that we don't know the answers to.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to say, Lord, lead and guide us. We're crying out. We need discernment that we don't have in ourselves.
Right.
And so it's a great time to be reading Proverbs because we're searching for that treasure of wisdom right now.
Yeah. So what do you have for us this coming week?
Well, we'll move into Proverbs 4. And there's one particular verse, Larry, that I'm excited to unpack. And that is chapter 4, verse 23. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. And what we're going to talk about is what it means to keep our hearts. What it means to be pure of heart.
Oh, yeah.
In a world of cynicism and hostility, it's so easy for our hearts to become contaminated with bitterness.
Yeah.
And the link that Proverbs makes is to say that purity of heart is hand in hand with wisdom. If you are walking before me in purity of heart, God says, you're going to be on the right path.
Yeah.
It's not so much about your smarts.
No.
It's about your heart.
About your heart, right.
And I think that's an unexplored topic.
I think that's really good, because if I'm walking with a hardened heart,
Yeah,
I'm not going to hear.
That's
or
right.
I'm going to hear a distorted message.
Yep.
Boy, I'm looking forward to this week.
Well, there's a lot there, and I'm looking forward to it too.
All right.
Pray for me between now and then.
I'll do that. All right.
Thank you, sir.
All right. This has been good again.
We'll talk again next week.
All right.
Good deal.